My name is Zoe Dean. I am a registered nurse at Southwell, which used to be Tiff Regional Hospital. I'm here today because I want to give recognition to Hospice of Tiff area. Before I get into my grandmother's story, I'd like to share my story of how I came into nursing and how this experience with my grandmother was so profound for me. For years I had turned my back on God's calling for me to become a nurse. Had many excuses as to why I would quit. I would start, stop, and finally I just put it back on the shelf. Settled down. I was a hairdresser for many years and I did very well. I was able to raise my children at home while working, and that was great. But somewhere along the way in my grandmother's journey with Alzheimer's, I got that knock on the door again. And those same fears for me came out. I kept telling myself, you know, I can't do that. I can't wipe someone else's behind. I can't smell those smells. I can't hold someone's hand when they die. I can't do that. I'm weak. And a lot of prayer, a lot of thinking, and just the point that I was at in my life, I felt like I needed purpose in my life again. So I decided to just do it, to jump. And so I did. I gave up my hairdressing and my clients, which were wonderful, and I started my core. In that time period, my grandmother became worse, and she fell into the last stages of Alzheimer's disease. And my family and I were faced with the difficult decision whether or not to bring in end-of-life care for her. When you think of hospice care, I don't know about you, but I felt like making that decision was giving up on my grandmother. And she wasn't really capable of giving us feedback. You know, did she want that? Was it the right thing for her? So we really had a lot of guilt and a lot of responsibility with that decision, like everyone does. She was cared for about a week at Legacy Village where she lived. So our hospice nurse was Jill Booth, and she came in daily to take care of my grandmother. And when I met Jill, she was really friendly, and I didn't know what to expect from her. I didn't know what to expect from end-of-life care. I mean, I'd read about it and heard about it, and all of the morbidities that surround end-of-life care were in the back of my mind, because this was my grandmother and I loved her very much. And so the thing that was so amazing about Jill was she took me, this person that she did not know, and you know, her responsibility was my grandmother, but she educated me because I told her I would be at the bedside with my grandmother. So she educated me on how to better take care of my grandmother when she wasn't there. You know, bed baths and watching the Foley and her breathing, you know, things like that. What to expect with her breathing and just the different things that I won't get into with end of life. But she was very patient, and she was always very reassuring, and she was always a phone call away from me. There was so many moments with my grandmother that were wonderful, and I will savor them forever because we relived old memories and we made new memories. But the most profound part of that experience for me was that I realized God was using Jill and my grandmother to teach me the lesson that I can do it. And with him, I did do it. I did it. And I realized that seeing Jill, the nurse that she was for my grandmother, that I wanted to be that nurse. I wanted to give that kind of compassionate care to anyone I had or any person that I took care of. The way I viewed end-of-life care changed forever with that experience. The morbidity was gone. And when you sit with a loved one and you've been through it, I hope you understand what I'm about to talk about, because not everybody understands, and not everybody can be with a loved one when they die. But it's beautifully orchestrated, the way everything shuts down, and your hospice nurse is also in that orchestration because she is offering peace and comfort and mercy through every step of that. It doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to be painful. They bring that mercy and grace, and you see that. And while you're there, your time is so precious, and you realize it. You're spending those moments with your family at bedside, and you're making those memories and reliving old memories. You're saying the things that you might not ever get to say because you know it's time to say those things. I always thought that the last moments of someone's life would be really scary, painful, and just uncomfortable. But I sat with my grandmother at the bedside, holding her hand, singing her favorite songs, telling stories. That last night when she was not responsive, I crawled in bed with her. I laid beside her, us in that little twin bed, and we had our last sleepover together. The room felt different that night. I don't know how to describe the feeling that I felt, but the room was different. I felt like she was already gone and that her body just had not let go yet. But I still continued to talk to her and caress her hand, hold her hand, tell her I loved her, thanked her for everything she'd ever done for me, which was so much. And I'm so thankful for those moments. If you don't have end-of-life care, if you don't have the insight of knowing that you're going to lose your loved one, you don't get those moments. So that's another blessing of having end-of-life care. You're prepared, you're educated. Your nurse will educate you on what to expect, and they give you a little bit of a timeline, although there's not a for sure timeline, but they can tell you where you're at and what to expect, and you really wrap your arms around every moment with that loved one, and that was so special to me. That night I told my grandmother that I would not leave until she was gone. When she was ready to go, that she could let go and we would be okay. And that it was time for her to let go. It was time for her to go to Poppy, go to Susan, and run to Jesus. And she was so peaceful that night. When she took that last breath, all of the expectations I had of how it would be went through the window, just flew out the window. The only way I can describe her final moment, her last breath, is to compare it to the butterfly trying to emerge from its cocoon. You see the struggle, you know it's hard, but you know something beautiful is coming from that. So the struggle continues. And when she took her last breath, I felt like I was watching the butterfly take flight for the first time. And it was beautiful. I felt so honored to be a part of that. It was so special. I had this epiphany that will always stay with me as long as I'm a nurse. We always see life in its beauty. It's beautiful. But in those final moments with my grandmother, I realized that death could be just as beautiful if you have the right nurse. I would like to take this time to thank Hospice of Diphtheria for giving us Jill as a nurse to care for my grandmother. Her education, her compassion, her personality was perfect for us, and she made our experience amazing. She enabled us to enjoy those last days with my grandmother to the fullest. She was always a phone call away, and she will never be forgotten for all of those moments that she came and encouraged and just educated us on what to expect and what to do. She was amazing.